Good morning, everybody. So today we're going to talk about how to prepare for a national park vacation. Now you might say, why should I listen to you? You should listen to me because I'm going to be heading to my 43rd national park. For 39 of the national park that we visited, we've had our kids in tow with us. I think the youngest they were was my son was about 9 months old when we went on our first national park trip with the kids, which was to Shenandoah. So for a lot of this advice I'm going to share with you, we've had kids with us when we've gone to these parks. I'm going to share with you what you need to know to plan a national park trip and my best advice to make sure that your trip goes smoothly. As someone who has been to a lot of parks, I believe that I have a lot of expertise and a lot of knowledge that I can share with you to make your trip just a little bit easy. So let's start. So if you're taking a national park vacation, you definitely need to plan. And when I say plan, I mean you need to book things like lodging, possibly months in advance. You need to secure time permits if that's a thing. If you cannot get a time permit, then you're going to have to probably get up very, very early to enter the park before the permit hours start. I know permits are in places like Rocky Mountain and parks like that. So visiting a national park is going to require some initial planning to just make sure you have what you need to get into the park. The other thing that's been super helpful is if you're visiting a lot of parks in one year, get yourself the America the Beautiful Pass. A lot of times they have a lane where just pass holders can go in. It'll be as simple as showing your pass, showing your ID, and you're going to be able to bypass some of the lines, hopefully. Just as a little bit of a side note here, if you haven't had the America the Beautiful Pass for a few years, they have made a change to it. So it used to be that you could have 2 names on your America the Beautiful Pass. They've reduced that, they said, because of abuse. So it's down to 1 name. So for couples like my husband and I, it can be really frustrating. We used to like having both names on the park pass. Let's say, you're in the park with your family and you need something. Somebody needs medicine, or you have to run to a grocery store and you have to leave the park. What used to be nice is I could stay with the kids. My husband could go out and run that errand and then get back in because the park pass had his name on it. With the change, the park pass is tied to 1 person. So we made the decision to put my name on it. But this can just cause a little bit of challenges in situations like that, where now if we have to run out and run an errand, I have to be the one to do that, or we both have to go together because only my name is on the park pass. So if it's been a little while since you bought the pass, be aware that if you buy it this year, that's something that you're going to have to deal with. The pass is tied to 1 person. So I'm a big believer in just planning. And what I will do is I'll make a rough schedule of the hikes that I think I want to do. And then I'll also make alternatives, because we all know sometimes Mother Nature throws a wrench into your plans. Sometimes trails are closed due to bear activity, or sometimes you might get there and there might be no parking. So I always plan for alternatives. But I think another thing that people don't talk about is sometimes you take these trips and you try to pack so much into them. You want to make sure that you leave downtime. You want to leave time for those kind of like chance experiences, like, I don't know, you stumble upon a great viewpoint and you can sit and have lunch there, or maybe you want to watch the sunset, or maybe you want to take a swim in a lake somewhere. You need to leave that downtime so you can kind of have those like spontaneous magical moments in the park too. So you have to have the right balance of planning, but that you also have to have the free time too, because a lot of times, sometimes those can end up being the most magical experiences when you just kind of spur of the moment, hey, let's sit here for a little while, things like that. So obviously national parks are more popular than ever. The crowds are real when you get there. My best advice is get up early. Get up early, get to the trailhead early, and everybody has a different definition of early, but I mean really, really early. A lot of times like right when sun rises. And I just find for me, filming, I like to be away from the crowds. I like the solitude. That works best. We'll come back in the afternoon and sometimes take a nap because it is vacation. You want to be able to relax a little bit. If you can, in certain parks, I find the shuttle system is a great way to get around without driving. Just be aware that sometimes shuttles can be super crowded. I remember one time in Yosemite, we waited 3-4 shuttles after a hike to try to get on, and then only barely were we able to just cram standing room only on the front of the shuttle. So there can be shuttles. Just be aware that they can be super, super popular during busy times. And the other thing is You know, everybody wants to do, there's usually like the set, like amazing trails at each park. And if you're going to do those, just get the early start. The other advice I have is to try to explore those lesser known trails. A lot of times there may be trails that also have kind of like the same epic view, but maybe they're just not as popular. And I think in a lot of cases, if you do trails like that, you're going to have that solitude and that more peaceful experience, less impact on the park. So definitely explore some of the still good trails, but the less popular trails. Given what we know about staffing cuts and cutbacks to our national park and rangers being let go and things like that, we know that our parks are understaffed, underfunded right now. It's pretty tricky time for the national parks. And I think knowing that, you really want to make sure when you go to a national park that you have everything you need to be prepared to keep yourself safe. I think sometimes it's so easy to be like, oh, well, we're just going on this little hike around the lake. We don't need to bring the pack. We don't need to bring stuff like that. And you really do, especially with the cutbacks and things like that. You want to make sure you're carrying enough water. You want to make sure you have your first aid kit. You want to make sure you're prepared for changing conditions. Sometimes you get up on the top of a mountain, elements and conditions can change so fast. Have grain gear with you, have a spare clothing, dry clothing to put on, carry a little emergency kit. Just be prepared. That's my advice. And I think you see and you hear the stories of so many people that have to be rescued from these national parks, whether it's from like heat exhaustion or exposure to the elements. And it's just people really not being prepared, not doing their research, and not taking things seriously enough. So my advice to you is be prepared, carry what you need, be smart, and just try not to get yourself in a bad situation. My other advice is, you can't rely on the cell phone service. You want to make sure you have your paper maps. You want to download your hikes and things on all trails if you use that ahead of time, because you're not going to have cell service. And sometimes even the cell service in the lodges are terrible. So if you're thinking like, oh, we'll get there and then we'll plan, probably not a great idea. So have what you need ahead of time that you're going to need for navigation, because you just can't rely on the cell service in the parks. So I guess my other advice is when you go to a national park, I really want people to experience it. I know there's a sense of like checking off like the popular things, or I want to go to all these viewpoints and things like that. And I think it's tempting to try to cram in too much. But my advice to you is to pick a few, really special things and really enjoy them. Do that hike and sit there and have your lunch and savor the view. Or watch a sunrise, watch a sunset, go to a ranger program. Do the things that are really going to be memorable and really allow you to experience things in the park. If you're just racing from hike to hike and trying to cram in too much, you're not really going to get to experience things. A lot of times, if you want to see wildlife, you're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to get yourself to the right place at the right time and just sit there and kind of observe. So that's my advice to you. Just try to make time for those special moments in the national parks, and don't feel like you have to do everything. My advice, you're better served doing less, but really savoring those things and not feeling like you have to rush through them. This may seem completely obvious, but it is so important in a national park to leave no trace. You want to make sure you're carrying, like one of the simplest things I do, we just bring a plastic grocery bag with us and I'll throw it in the hiking backpack. And then as my kids eat snacks or we have lunch and things and we accumulate trash, just tie everything in the plastic grocery bag. And then later when you get back to the hotel or the visitor center, you can dispose of it. But it's just so important not to litter. It's so critical to respect the signs and stay on trails, especially in the national parks. They're getting so many visitors. It's so important that we stay on trail. Obviously, don't feed wildlife. Don't do anything that puts wildlife in danger. If you're camping, be bear smart. Make sure you put your food away, follow the rules, use the bear lockers. I remember a particular, I think it was Glacier National Park, where we get to the top of this hike. We're sitting there on these rocks. My kids are eating snacks, and all these like ground squirrels, like they were so close. Like they wanted to like run up to my kids' hands and take the snacks. and my kids were like, oh, can we feed them? And we just try to explain to them, like, you know, you feed this ground squirrel like your Dorito or your potato chip. That's so much sodium. That's so bad for them. They get accustomed to people. And it was clear that people were feeding them, the behavior of them coming up to the kids. So I know sometimes in situations it could be really tempting to feed wildlife. They look cute, but please don't do that. Please help protect wildlife. We visited Petrified Forest National Park. In the visitor center, there were all these letters and all these pieces of petrified wood that had been mailed back that people had stolen from the park and then later felt guilty about and mailed them back. But from a ranger's perspective, you don't know where it came from or where it went, so they ended up in the visitor center. And I just think it's such an important reminder to leave things as they are in a national park. You might think, oh, what's the harm of taking one rock or this or that? And you can't. The parks belong to everybody. It's not yours to take. So take photos. That's my favorite thing to do. Get up close, take some detailed photos, take memories with your mind, and leave everything where it lays. I think a last bonus tip that I have is if you're visiting the national park, a lot of times some of the best information we get, especially on trail conditions and things like that, are from a ranger. Don't be afraid to go in the visitor center and talk to a ranger. So when we were in Guadalupe Mountains National Park about 2 years ago, we knew we were going during the windy season. We had to go in the winter when our kids were off school, and we knew what it was going to be like, that it would be windy. And one of the best advice we got is we wanted to climb like a higher peak, and we went in and talked to the ranger, and they were saying people were turning back, so we knew that wasn't for us. But the ranger recommended this Devil's Hall Trail, and he talked to us about how it's kind of like a slot canyon and you'll be sheltered from some of the wind there. And it was really solid advice. It was an awesome hike. Kids absolutely loved it. It was like a whole rock scramble thing. And it was a really beautiful, impressive, like slot canyon and viewpoint when you got to the end. And talking to that ranger, we made such a better choice than trying to do the hike that we had on our list, where conditions were so windy, it would have been dangerous, it would have been miserable. So I've been really lucky in that I've been to 42 parks, and Crater Lake number 43 is coming up next. For our family, this has been a conscious choice. There's a lot of places we haven't been. We've never been to Disney. We haven't been out of the country too many times. So when we take a vacation, we try to prioritize national parks just because it's something that we absolutely love. And this has been something that's been really fun for our family. So I'm really lucky that I've gone to so many of them. We're going to keep going. My husband and I have a goal to hopefully see them all one day. We'll see. Some of them are really, really hard to get to, like some of the parks in Alaska or American Samoa, or just some pretty remote places, but it's a fun goal to have. So I hope you find this advice helpful. As a person who visits national parks often, I learn all the time, and I just want to share this with all of you because I know that so many of you also visit the parks. I hope you find this helpful, and stay tuned for some Crater Lake footage. Bye everybody, have a great day.